Hello, amazing parents. Welcome back to our talk show, Get Right with Miss Wright. We are here with two amazing, beautiful ladies as we are entering a new episode, a little bit more of a serious episode about coping with grief during the holidays. So we have our amazing LPC, Lona Snell.
Oh, thank you.
And my friend, yes, excellent. She has also been a parent here at Bradley as well, but now she is full-time LPC and doing her thing. And we have our amazing parent and our school secretary also, Keisha Scott. So Keisha Scott, tell us, Mom, how many kids do you have?
I have 4 kids.
Yeah, four.
I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 4-year-old. 3 girls and 1 boy.
Busy, busy, busy.
Yes, ma'am.
And I love me some Trey. Going strong. And the reason why I brought specifically my parent Keisha here is because I think with the holidays approaching, you just recently had a loss.
I lost my husband. We have been married for 15 years.
Wow.
We have 4 children together. He was my only boyfriend, like only anything. Had never been with anyone else,
Oh, wow.
just him. And
That's deep love.
it is. It is. We've been together since I was 12.
Wow.
And it was sudden. It wasn't nothing I could prepare for. It was, I mean, you can never prepare for losing someone, but it just happened. And it was a shock that he's no longer here.
Mhm.
But that was my best friend, like my best friend ever. So,
Well, I'm so glad that you're able to be transparent and vulnerable with us this evening, and I hope that, I really do hope and pray that you're able to speak to the thousands of parents that are, out there that's maybe struggling with grief. And sometimes we feel like grief is just associated with a loss of a loved one, but we're gonna talk about what is grief, because not only did you lose your husband, it sounds like almost like you probably lost some other things as well, like everything is
Yes.
hitting you.
everything. My kids lost their dad. I lost my best friend. He was our center. Like, God is our center, but under God, it was him. And he did everything. Everything. I was his backbone, but he did everything. He was our breadwinner. He had different relationships with each child, and that went away. We had a relationship, and that went away. So we lost a lot. It wasn't just him.
A lot of changes right
A
then
lot
and
of
there.
changes, yep. And no time, like I said, no time to prepare. No time to say, okay, let me process. You can't process that. You can't process, I'm sorry.
No, don't be.
You can't process just speaking with your husband on the phone on the way home and then explaining to your kids 2 hours later that daddy is gone. There's no way prepared for that.
That's hard.
There's no way prepared for that.
Well, I'm glad that you are able to express that, and I want you, Lana, to kind of dive in deep now and just tell us about just grief definitions and examples, because like she said, it's a lot of changes. Like, yes, I lost my husband, but I lost a whole bunch with that.
So grief is the emotional suffering that comes with the loss, right? That you're forced or asked to process. And so you're asking to process through pain that you wouldn't put yourself in or ask for. And so when you're saying that there's a lot of loss, there's even a lot of loss of identity or family structure or, all of those aspects of what was versus what is, and then what are we being asked to now do, and in the moment of that grief, a lot of times there's financial situations, there's all of these things that you're asked to process when you're having trouble processing the loss. And so how do you process and manage that, in all of those aspects and those task-oriented things in the midst of that emotional suffering?
My first thing that I wanted I worried about my children. That was the first thing, because we lived sort of like a fairy tale family life. My kids didn't know, they know struggle, they know issues that arise, but with their dad and I, it was easy for us to say, okay, this is how you do it, and this is how you handle it. So everything in life to them seemed easy. And my oldest just told me this, Mama, I thought life was like a fairy tale. So it was a rude awakening for them, for me. I just wanted to make sure mentally they were okay. I knew it didn't set in, because even with me, the night that he passed, I didn't cry. I didn't cry until the next day, midday, when it was like, he's really gone. Like, I didn't hear from him. And that was not like him. We spoke all the time. Like, when I say, we were like Velcro. We talked to each other all day long. And when I first realized it, it was the next day, around 12. I'll never forget. It was around 12, and I just broke down crying. And everyone was like, well, what's wrong? What happened? And I'm like, he's gone. He's really gone. I'll never hear his voice again. This is the first time in over 20 years I went a full 24 hours without hearing my husband's voice.
So it's powerful that you mentioned that, and you talk about just that emotional, suffering that comes deep within. Help us to really go into, I'm glad you said it, because I can hear it, like the day that it happened. It's almost sounding like shock, like, like your brain is trying to process. You feel like maybe I should be crying, I should be, or
you do feel like that, and you get a guilt, like, why am I not crying?
So she's gonna walk us in. I'm excited about the stages, because sometimes people, and without giving much, because I really want Lona to go digging deep about the stages of grief, because there are stages and how they move back and forth.
Yes. Absolutely. So, and that's what's hard too, and some of the guilt, the assumed guilt, is by other people's expectations, or even your prior expectation of what grief is and what that loss looks like, or is supposed to look like. And so if people validate or invalidate how you're processing, then you can even assume guilt because of their judgments that are placed, intentional or unintentional, right? Sometimes I laugh, with clients when we're getting real about it, and I'm like, okay, what are the stupid things that people have said to you while you're, right? While you're grieving, because there can be a lot, and they feel like that they're helping, and they may not know how to help, and so we'll later get to that as well. But how are there words for the amount of suffering that someone can feel? And so it's okay to validate and say, I see your pain. I may not understand your pain, but I see your pain.
I like how you say that, because we have to be careful, I believe, in using the words that I understand. We have to be careful. I know we throw out there like, I understand how you feel. No. Like, did you lose? It's almost like, well, did you lose, your husband?
Walked in those steps.
Or like, when we talk about the different types of grief, but did you lose your job? Like, do you have these same financial things? Because when there's an emotional suffering that comes from even the essence of loss, like when we talk about, grief can be even losing to someone to mental illness. Are you going through that? And I think when people say, I understand,
like, that doesn't really bother me as much as, I've had numerous people tell me, just stay strong.
wow.
That comment to me, is like, okay, how do you stay strong? It's many ways that you can cope with stuff, but what is your definition of strong?
And strength is vulnerability. It is weakness. But a lot of people look at vulnerability and weakness as a strength or weak, but it's not. And within the vulnerability, that is strength. It's modeling and saying, this is where I'm at, this is the truth, and I'm hurting. And if that's strength to just get up and go on each day when I don't want to, that's strength.
And that's a struggle.
Right.
That is a struggle.
Right.
That is probably my biggest struggle, and I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I've always loved my job. I've always loved my job from the time I've entered into the district. I love my children. That love will never, the love that I have for them will never go. I love my husband, but once I lost him, I have purpose, but I don't have a purpose. My purpose is my kids. Like, I get up. They are the only reason, and I'm not lying. I'm not exaggerating about it. Like, they are the only reason I get up. I don't want to get up. I can say that. Even now, I don't want to get up.
Sure.
I don't want to go to work. I don't want to be responsible. That's probably not the best way to say it, but
No,
I don't want to be responsible. I just want to lay in my bed. I want to cry all day.
Because the truth is, to carry that pain is hard.
It is.
But
It
that
is.
also is strength, right? That is the definition of strength. You are getting up every time that you don't want to get up, you know, and it's carrying that pain, and that load can be heavy, you know, depending on what stage of grief. So there's the denial in the beginning that you mentioned, right? So that we don't even want to assume that the truth, you know, and then there's the anger. Why did you leave me? Why did this happen? You know, why am I in this situation? A lot of times during our anger, that's when people can be saying those helpful things, and then we're finding them like, really? You know, like, is it, you're gonna talk about your lost pet, and I just thought, you know, it's even small things that then people start comparing pain, right? Through the anger, and through the hurt, and through the suffering, right? But people are trying to understand, and so they are saying those things, okay, well, I've lost a dog, or I've lost a grandma, or I've lost, right? And they're trying to understand. But I think it's okay to say, I don't understand, I couldn't possibly understand, but I see your pain, right? You know, and it's a whole different meaning, you know, to share or to walk or to sit and to listen to that, you know, with somebody's pain. Because then now they're not carrying the load alone, there's at least support.
Right. And even just encouraging, sometimes just saying, hey, I'm here for you. Just that reminding, you know, for people and, you know, for their situations, like, I see your pain and I'm here, you know, and leaving that door open. And I think for us that may not have experienced the same thing, Lana, what you say, it's really important, like when we look at our kids, that we don't know what stage that person is in when they are feeling that way. So for us individuals that may not be experiencing grief, we may need to check ourselves and understand that that person may be in some type of emotion, but just, you know, not assume like, oh, well, you know, she's a little snappy today, you know, or she's...
And those emotions ping pong back and forth, like they do. They ping pong back and forth. You have your days and you're like, okay, I'm up, I'm in a good mood today. And then it could be on the way to work listening to a song, or passing a location that you shared with that person, or your kids. And I experienced this recently, your kids saying, Mama, whose smile do I have? And then you go back and you're like, you have your dad's, but that's hard to, you know, you stay strong, you say, you got your daddy's smile. And then behind closed doors, you break down. Not because you don't want your kids to see that, but because sometimes you feel like they've seen enough of it. And you just, you know, you want to make sure if they're in a happy place, they're in that happy place right now.
Well, and it's interesting, I'm glad you touched on that. So through those processes, we said the denial, the anger, there's the bargaining, and then there's the depression, right? It's taking the action over the feeling, because if we waited to feel like getting up or going on about our day, we would not, right? So it's taking the action, the discipline over the feelings in that moment. And then the bargaining, the depression, and then the acceptance at some point. But it's not linear, that process either. It can be all over the place, which is what you're talking about, that pinging.
Tell us about the bargaining thing, because I think, you know, for some of our parents, it may be like just really defined, like we know with denial, just and totally denial. I mean, that is just what it is. We have the anger, but I think sometimes I've even heard it from students coming in as a school counselor, like, you know, I wish I could have been there, like, or what if it, like, explain that.
And a lot of them will, especially with kids, students, right, that come in, it can be them wanting to assume their place. It can be the other parent that's feeling this way, the kiddo feeling this way, or if I had done better, or maybe if I'd acted better, or maybe this happened because I've done this,
My kids have experienced that.
Yeah.
And they've said it. One thing that I'm thankful for is that all my babies are open. And I've had a hand in it from the very beginning. And I've told them, please just talk to me. I'm not gonna force you to talk, but if you feel a way, talk. Just say it, randomly blurt it out.
Right.
It may not be the right time, but we can handle it. We can get through that situation together.
But they mentioned bargaining before, like give us an example.
Yeah, my oldest, she's a teenager. Teenagers are like, please just leave me alone, don't talk to me again. And she's, even with her dad, she went to that point of, just leave me alone, I don't wanna talk to nobody. And then once he passed, and actually it was like a couple weeks ago, and she said, you know those nights that I would tell daddy, just leave me alone? I wish I could take that back. Like, I wish I had not said that to him, because now I can't even have him come see me anymore. So they express it.
And it's hard when kids feel like they're responsible.
Yes.
Like, even if you say, like, if it was something related to whatever the cause is, like, well, did I do that? Or maybe I could have been a little
my
bit
youngest, my 10-year-old,
respectful.
she was the one that found him. And so she went through this period, like a month, and that was, well, what if I went in earlier? If I came in earlier, he'd probably still be here. Or I saw him, but I didn't get up and act like I didn't move.
That's hard.
It is. Even the 4-year-old, he's experienced the same thing. Did I do something wrong to make daddy go? Was it something I said? Or each one of them have had that feeling.
Well, because that process is all over the place, and each person is feeling maybe in a different stage, right? So one may be feeling depressed, and the other one may maybe be angry, the other one may be bargaining or in denial. So I think that's where the assuming different roles comes in, because then it may be like, well, I don't want to bring my grief up because then I don't want to ruin your day, right? Or I have to be strong, even within the kids' structure, right? I have to be strong so I can't feel my feelings, right? But nonetheless, it resurfaces whether we wanted to or not, and we're either coping at the best of our ability or we're struggling. And it's okay to struggle. It's a messy, messy process. There's so many intense emotions that happen, especially when it's sudden. Ourselves, we just lost my brother-in-law not too long ago, and he was in a car wreck. And his wife has a mother of 4 children, and one minute they were on the phone, and they were supposed to be going to a meeting at a birthday party, and he never arrived. And so there's that process, right? And then what? Making all of those decisions, and then each being strong, but the main thing is that strength comes from being weak together and sharing that baggage and sharing that pain.
It does help. It does help having those, even though they're little people, it does help having those people to go through that with you. They understand your pain from a different perspective, but they understand your pain. They have the same hurt.
I think what's appreciative and letting our parents know is just opening that vulnerability, because we live in a society that I'm always stressing that we do things different, and we like to just sweep that stuff under the rug and keep moving. But you have to open the door of communication and be vulnerable. It may be for that moment that you cry and celebrate. It may be like, I'm angry, because I think that, especially when you have households, like you said, 4 kids, 4 different ages, that means that they could be at different stages at different times. And you're not a therapist.
That's a struggle.
And that's a struggle, because it's like, okay.
It's a struggle, because as a mom, you're like, okay, what do I say first? You see them all struggling.
Right.
One may be struggling a little more, but they're all struggling. And so you feel like you have to be an octopus at times, and you have to say, okay, I have to approach this one this way, this one this way, this one this way, and so forth and so on. And at the same time, keep your composure so that you can be that strong parent for them. You're their only parent.
I think an important part of it is planning for that pain and the purpose, because the grief is all over the place. So, but planning for it and saying, okay, this is what we know is going to happen, we can expect, And for the unexpected, let's plan for that. So if one of us is having a hard day, what's our plan for pain?
I like that.
You know, because the pain's gonna come. You may hear from other people, try to avoid it, or you should get over it, or you should, how long are you gonna grieve, right? But let's plan for that. Let's plan for those emotions, let's plan for the pain. How are we gonna share in that? How are we gonna uplift ourselves? Is it gonna be turn on a comedy? Is it gonna be watching an old video? Is it gonna be, writing out a story or a drawing? What is that gonna look like for that pain when we struggle?
We've done it.
Good.
We, I don't know for other families that have experienced what we experienced. It's like, it bonded us.
Mhm.
So if I'm feeling down on that day, and she can attest to it, I went and told her and I said, they're all three texting me at the same time, and they're all three feeling the exact same way that I feel. And on those days when we get home, it's like, I know you have homework, but put it to the side. What do y'all wanna eat? Like, we don't, it's, let's focus on what makes us happy. Let's do what makes us happy in the moment, and then we'll worry about the rest of it later.
But that's good that you have a plan in place, to handle that, cause I think that sometimes parents, like you said, just get so, like you said, grief is messy. So it's like, okay, what do you do? But if you have something in mind while you're in a positive mood, the positive that if this happens, this is
We just
a
kinda
plethora
shut
of
everybody
options.
out. I mean, that may not be right, but we just, it's like we go in our own little bubble. And we just do what makes us laugh, and we do what makes us happy, and at the end, it's like, are you okay now? Even they'll say, are you okay?
It's pausing and planning for that pain, because it's gonna come. So then it's embracing it and acknowledging it, feeling it, and then releasing it. And we release it by really, feeling. I mean, you have to release it. You have to release it either verbally, aesthetically, somehow, so that you're able to have a temporary relief, right? It can be crying, it can be screaming, it can be, whatever, laughing, it can be drawing, writing, whatever it is, but you have to release it.
Right.
Instead of just holding on to it or just avoiding it, or because it resurfaces.
It does, and it comes back again and again and again.
So when you say it comes back again, going into, like, tell us some of, like, what are those grief behaviors, so that parents are aware. Maybe like you're experiencing grief and you may not even know what to call it. You just feel like it's just simply depression.
Sure.
Like, what are some continuous behaviors that maybe even adults have, or kids?
And it can look different, especially since you have an array of ages, right? And it can be different for kids based on their personalities as well. So those are things to account for. But I mean, it can be anything from aggression to avoidance to isolation to projection. It can be the crying, the self-loathing, all of those ugly things can be factors that come into it. And with the younger ones, they may be more physical, or they may be more, they may cry more because they may not have the words or the language to actually speak. But it's really helping to identify, no matter what the age, identify the emotion, right? So if it's the anger that you're seeing, or the behaviors, the drop in grades, the aggression, all of that, it's saying what's below that, right? It's hurt, it's pain, it's disappointment. Let's go there, because that's what it is, right? And then let's work through that first. But together is the main,
I know with my 4-year-old, the girls, it's easier expressing because they're older and they know, Mama, I just don't feel right today. I don't like it. I don't like the way I feel. But he doesn't. He doesn't understand what he's feeling. But what I have,
And that it's hard because he's young.
he's 4. He's trying, and he's trying
It's
to
like
figure out
figuring out yourself and then figuring out these emotions behind it.
What I can say is it's a pattern with him. On those days that we feel that way, he feels that way too, and his way of expressing it. He'll just say, I'm just so sad today. He'll just say it. Some kids may not. Or he'll get mad at everybody. It's either extremely, I'm sad, and he's weepy all day, or extremely, I'm mad. And if anybody messes with him, or anybody says anything, or anybody touches, it's automatic aggression with him. It's never like an in-between. And so that's what I picked up on. And on those days that he's like that, it's just, come here and give mommy a hug.
Mhm.
And then he'll either lay on me and cry, or he'll say, I'm just so mad.
Mhm.
And I say, I understand.
Mhm.
And
I get it.
would you say, Lana, that that's appropriate for especially the babies of that age?
Absolutely. And because of the physical aggression and all of that that's coming, he's using that outward physical, for him, he's externalizing that pain. But then when you're giving him that physical hug, it's then internalizing that safety, right? So with the loss, you can feel a lack of safety, but then with the physical hugging and soothing, then you're giving that back to him.
And I do that with all of them. When I see that they're having good days, a bad day, or they just look like it. Like they just look like it's hard and they're thinking about it. That's always my first plan of action with them. Come give mommy a hug. And they'll sit there, they'll sit on my lap and they'll just hug me forever. And I'll just tell them it's okay. It's okay. Mommy feels what you're feeling. And I understand.
And I think it's important for you as a parent or any individual, whether it's a relative or somebody going through grief, to be able to just have that bond. Like, just, how do you feel, before you get into more of different behaviors, how do you feel, honestly, when someone just says for you, like, I got you, or that closeness, or that physical hug, or how do you feel when you take in that time?
Can I be honest?
Mhm.
For me, it's hard, because I go back to nobody ever made me feel the way he made me feel. And of course, I have that support system. I have family. I have my kids, but I miss that love. I miss his, I got you. I miss his, everything is gonna be okay. So I hear it. That doesn't mean that I actually take it in and say, it'll be like, okay, thank you. But to hear that from other people is hard. It's hard because the one that I do want to have me, I can't have that anymore. And I realize it and I know it. I understand it. It's just hard. It's a harsh reality.
No, don't be. Don't be.
It's such a touchy subject.
The pain is real from the loss, and so don't be apologetic for what you've been asked to endure. It's a lot. It's a lot for all of you. But it is a process.
It is.
And y'all have been working through that process together.
The timing, you can't never plan for it, but to have to go through like Thanksgiving and Christmas and even trick or treating, stuff like trick or treating. I cried before my kids went trick or treating because that's something we did together. Like I said, we were Velcro. We did everything together. And even
It just hits you so fast because, life is life, right? Time keeps
it
going.
does, and you have to keep going with it. You can't stop. Even though in your mind you're like, I just want to have a day where I just let me process. But you don't get that. Your bills still have to be paid. Your kids still have to be fed. They have to go to school. Clothes have to be washed. Like, you still have to keep up with that everyday duty, everyday role.
And then those holidays come, right? And the expectation that society pushed for celebrating at a time that you don't feel like celebrating. And so it's almost like a lot of times wearing, a mask or playing two roles, right? Here's the version of what I should be doing or looking like or feeling like, but here's what I feel inside.
Right.
The normalcy of jobs and things like that help us get back into that routine to, further us along the process instead of just stopping, prolonging the process. But it doesn't mean that we want to.
Right. And honestly, you're doing it out of routine.
Do you feel, and I'm glad that you said that, so let's pull back a little bit, because listening, this is really good conversation. So for those that are continuing to work, like I heard you say, you know, even things along the line like, you know, I just don't have a purpose no anymore. So where you are right now as a mom, like, and I know sometimes you feel so completely deflated. Do you feel like you even do like your work with as much passion as before?
I don't feel like I do anything with as much passion that I did before. I feel like I'm trying to find who I am now.
Yeah.
Like I knew who I was when he was here. I knew I was this campus secretary and everything depended on me. I knew I was a mom and my kids depended on me, making sure food was on the table, that they were at school, and I knew that role. Like all your roles are clear before all this happens. Once it happens, everything is blurred. It's like mixing a bucket of M&Ms
I like how you say that.
and now you're having to sort them. Who am I? What am I? I know I'm a mom still. I know that. I'm not a wife any longer. I'm still a daughter. I'm still a campus secretary. But all that is blurred.
It's like finding your new niche in the way that you do things because the people that we love or, you know,
Are
share.
no longer here as part of that routine.
Or I would even say, like I said, because I know, like, you know, we talk about loved ones, like, but even, you know, I think about people that grieve the loss of a job. That's your passion. That's, you know, your bread and butter. Like, that's what's gotten you. And then when it's taken away, it's like, you know,
Everything's been
anxiety. You know,
Breathtaking.
what do I do now? How do I start all over? You know, even when we think about breakups, like grief in general, it doesn't have to always associate itself with death. I like how you said the emotional suffering of, you know, due to loss, because I really want you now, Lona, to talk about how do we cope with that? How do we even get to a point where, like, the holidays are here? We know the world celebrates it. We know that it's coming. Whether or not Thanksgiving's gonna come and Christmas is going to come. But how do we get to a point to be peaceful, or what strategies or what tools or insight that you can give us as individuals experiencing grief in whatever type of way that we can still manage to be still resilient and continue on, and even for our kids.
And you touched on it, which was perfect. Divorce, the loss of identity, even through retirement, which should be celebrated, can be very anxiety provoking for some. Loss of a pet, miscarriage, all of these things, or these celebrations can also be landmarks of, okay, this is now, you know, year one or year two, or if I had a child, you know, if that child had lived, then it would have been year one, year two. So there's loss comes in many forms. But it's the vision and the image of what we thought was going to happen versus what did not. And so to push through, you know, there are activities and so forth that can be helpful as far as honoring that person and building that resiliency within the family. Even small things such as, you know, getting rocks and decorating those rocks and putting those out, you know, for the holidays or within the garden or at the gravesite. Releasing and talk about letting go of the pain, not letting go of the person.
Wow, that's deep.
Right? And saying, this is what, I don't want to carry this, right? So I'm going to let go of this part of the pain, parts of us, that part of the
That's
pain.
hard.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
So you can write it down, put it in a balloon and try and do all of that, you know, to do the actual physical part. But to try, part of the process is to plan your purpose through the pain. Who are you? Find your identity through the pain. Your mended self, what is that image? What is that of y'all as a family moving forward? Not what was or what you hoped for. In the moment, what is that mended version of your family going to be? And start taking steps towards that, right? Who are you as you're saying this as far as the brokenness, right? Who are you after that? What is that version of you mended, right? Plan for that purpose. Right, and then as you work through the process, and it's the process, it don't just happen overnight.
Right.
It's that messy, ugly process
Right.
of saying, all right, God, here I am, I'm gonna let go of this pain, this parts of the pain, I'm trying to let go of the pain, not of him, not of my memories, right, but of the things that are gonna hold me back, right? And trying to release that, and it may be over and over and over again.
It is
right?
a daily struggle.
Yeah,
Daily.
yeah.
But what she's saying is, I love, is that there's normalcy And what I'm also hearing though, which may be a little difficult, is you gotta want that change. I
Right.
think that's the hardest part, cause like with that stage of change, when we talk about with many different things in the world of counseling, like where are you, not necessarily wanting to get over whatever the loss is, but do you wanna persevere through it? Because, let's just be honest, like some don't, you know, some it's just like, no.
Because it's a really hard battle, like it's a really hard uphill battle. Myself, I
Mhm.
can't look at his pictures. I can't, hear his voice, like, that's hard. And so, that's one thing that you realize it as a person, you realize what you're shutting out. You know you're shutting it out, and you know why you're shutting out, because it hurts. It hurts to look at him. It hurts to see his face and know that I can never kiss his cheek anymore, or I can never feel those warm embraces anymore.
So would you say that would be a healthy part of letting go, or would you challenge that to say, Lana, what are your thoughts on getting to a point where you can embrace that, because that's part of that pain that you gotta let go? Like, how do you attack that?
So I think it's important to process the pain. When we find ourselves avoiding it, right, which most do throughout this process, because you don't want to feel the pain. I mean, who would? I mean, who wants to sit with it? But it is very, very heavy, right, to hold on and to sit in that pain. And sometimes it's that breakdown, right, where you just get so tired for that breakthrough to happen and say, okay, I'm so dadgum exhausted from staying in this pain that I need something else than what I'm doing, right? And so sometimes it's that rawness and saying, okay, anything has to be better than this. If it's processing this, if it's sitting with it, what do I need to do to move forward with him, with our relationship, with that memory, with those blessings that I have from him, versus sitting and staying stuck in the pain, right? And finding that purpose. What is that purpose for you, carrying through the pain and then with his memory, you know? And it's a hard transition to take on, you know? I mean, it has to be a cognitive choice, but it's hard to get to that place.
It is
make
very
the
hard to
choice.
get to that point.
Mhm.
It is. It's like I said, a daily struggle.
Mhm.
You'll go to bed and you'll say, I'm gonna do it tomorrow.
Mhm.
I'm gonna look at that picture.
Mhm.
Or I'll get back on Facebook.
But you know what I'm hearing from you is you're saying, it's not that you're saying that I'm not, you're saying that you're trying. And I think that our parents need to know that, because you are trying,
It is on my daily to-do list.
and that's okay. And when you get to that point, like she said, that, you know, bear no more, and you're ready to fully, you know, let that out, and I'm, you know, glad that this is so good, you know, for our parents to listen in, is because we're not saying like, you just gotta get there. Like what she's saying is that, you know, it is gonna take some time, but keep in mind, you still do have to have that want, and keep that want there, because that want's gonna eventually drive you to fully someday.
I look at it
able.
as like a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan.
Okay.
That's probably my best way of looking at it.
That's all right.
Because I do want to get to that point where I drive his vehicle. I want to get to that point where I get in the vehicle that he bought me, and I'm proud to drive it. At first I was, like, my husband got me this nice big truck that I wanted, and now it doesn't hold that same meaning. It's a reminder of who's not here. And I promise you, I look at it like a 5-year plan. I'm gonna, you know, it's not gonna take 5 years, but,
Don't put no time on it.
no, but I'm just saying, like, I guess I don't know how you look at it. Every night I go to sleep, like I said, it's on my to-do list. I'm gonna look at the picture tomorrow. I'm gonna look at the picture. It hasn't come yet, and that's my reality. It's not, I haven't looked at the picture yet, but it's on my everyday to-do list. I'll need to look at that picture.
But by making those goals and those daily cognitive choices, right, and those plans, that is planning for your purpose, right? That's giving you these goals of like, I'm gonna work through this is the process, this is that purpose, you know? Thanksgiving, you're gonna be having some time off. That may be a great time to turn that picture over and be reminded of all the things he left you with to be thankful for. And process that.
It's a lot of tears.
Yeah, yes ma'am, it is.
And what she's saying,
Yeah.
and we're gonna get into
It
like
is.
some, questions soon, but what I'm hearing from her is that you've gotta let it out though.
That
Like, you
release,
just feel so
you have to have the
vulnerable,
release.
you
I
feel
know.
so raw, and you feel,
yeah girl,
it's
hard.
like it opens a floodgate of, is it ever gonna stop? Because it takes you back to that night that you lost him.
Mhm.
You know you're gonna stop crying, you know eventually the tears are gonna stop.
Mhm.
But when it starts, it's like, it won't stop. It won't stop. When am I gonna stop? I'm tired of crying, but the tears just keep coming. They keep coming and they keep coming. And it brings you back to that feeling of, he's not here.
But that release is necessary for the relief. And so however many tears that need to fall is how many tears need to fall. That's what needs to be released.
It's almost like with our kids, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm always, as a school counselor, when they come in, and we actually had one, talk about the loss of his dad, and I'm always, like, even in my counsel toolkit, I've said, Ms. Wright's got the tissue, because I wanna, dry your tears. We just live in this culture, American society, like, don't cry. Like, enough is enough. And I think it's across all cultures.
Mhm.
Not a minority, not a majority, it doesn't matter. Like, we just live in this, like, you'll get it together, be strong, like you said, and keep it moving. But there are times where you just have to moan and groan and get that out of your system and be at peace because you hold so much in. And so what we're, discussing today is like knowing that you're going through, just listen, just even the many different stages of grief. That's enough in itself. That's gonna come with some tears. That's gonna come with some rage. There's gonna come with some denial, some attitude, but that acceptance, peace, and knowing that this is where I am right now. In 5 years, I may be like that. I may recover. 5 years, my baby girl, she may stop crying. 5 years from now, I may get a different job, the job that I want. But I have to be okay with in the moment. I'm gonna focus on today. And I did the best that I can. And I'm just gonna persevere with that. And we're gonna go to sleep, like you said, to-do list goals tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna try. And we're gonna go with that day. Not thinking, in a negative sense, like, okay, well, this is never gonna happen, obviously, because I failed all week long.
I feel like that's a very important thing. You can't think negatively, especially when you have people depending on you. You have those kids depending on you, and it takes a big person to say, you know what, I gotta think positively. I had to say, I'm gonna get up and I'm going to work in the morning. I have to get up and I have to put on that smile face and say, good morning, baby. You ready for school? Like, you have to remain positive no matter how much you want to just say, get up, it's time to go. Because you have those moments those mornings when you woke up and you just don't want to get up. But you can't reflect that negative feeling on those kids that depend on you to say, you know what, it is okay, Mom. It is okay.
Well, and something that helps is to kind of reframe the pain. And so you can go from feelings and fear, right, which we can get stuck in, to facts and faith.
Oh, wow.
So I use that a lot with a lot of things in counseling, but our fears and our feelings can get us all twisted around, right? I mean, it's like, almost like drowning or being in a washing machine, right? You can get so confused of which way's what, right? But if you're focusing on the facts that you have 4 kids, right? That you still have a family, even though that family structure has changed. You still have your faith, right? When you don't feel strong enough, you return to who you are through Him, right? So those are the things that can get you up to do the action and the discipline part as you move through that
I
process.
like that. We gotta do a handout. But I think that's important, facts in that nature, facts and faith for whatever you believe in, like just that positivity, like you said, instead of fears, because you have to be careful what you said, feelings and fears, it'll take over, and it confuse you, and sometimes You know, we can't just, I always say sometimes, can't trust your feelings.
Right.
You know?
I experienced
Because they
that
feel
when-
real, right?
Yeah.
They're distorted.
When he first passed, like I said, he was our breadwinner. He was the main thing in our household,
Sure.
and I experienced that. Oh, how am I gonna take care of his 4 kids? How am I gonna make sure that they're okay, that they eat every day, that they have food to eat every day, and that, like I said, the negativity can move in really easy. It can move in really easy, but I've always been a positive person. That's what helps me get through, along with my faith.
You are, we know.
I'm very faithful that God has a purpose and a plan for everything. And what I'm going through right now is just a storm. But I'll get through it.
Yes, you will.
I'll get through
Gotcha.
it.
Said a lot today.
That pain
Yes.
can be transformed into purpose for
Mhm.
whatever reason. You know what I mean? You may not know why yet, but
Right.
there will be a purpose for that pain,
Right.
you know, in that next chapter, in that next season.
So tell us, Lona, as before we get into questions and we end, just maybe a couple of more different insights or strategies or tools that families can do going into Thanksgiving, going into, you know, Christmas. Like, what are some things that they could do just quickly, you know, at home, just different scenarios. I know, like, for me as a school counselor, like, I've told my kids to write or think about the best memory you have, that person or that situation or that pet, and, you know, draw a picture, you know, of that event. And then, of course, some of them will tell me, well, I mean, it's sad, like, well, Miss Wright, I don't really remember, like, I was young and I was 2, but I'm just sad. And I said, well, if he or she was here today, you know, what would you tell him or what would you show him? Like, draw that scene, or where would y'all go? What, you know, and all of those things. Can you tell us a little bit about more what, you know, parents can do at home, you know, to help their family through these
Well,
next days?
I think too, one good thing that I'd like to bring up is to also structure, when we're talking about planning for the pain, it can also be to structure the pain. And so I like to have, to designate a 5 minutes, whether, and you can decide if it's better at night, before, you know, after they're winding down, or before school, but if they get too emotional before school, maybe not, you know, or it may be helpful, but you'll have to kind of play around for each person within the family. But to structure it and say, okay, I'm gonna feed my pain and feel my pain, right? And I'm gonna structure it to 5 minutes and experience all of those emotions at once. And then I'm gonna close it up and contain it and say, here's where I'm gonna leave it today, you know, and attempt to leave it so that it's not intrusive throughout my day, right? And so then you're structuring it instead of just carrying it all day long. But you can even do it together, you know, at the dinner table, or make it, you know, something like that. But sharing those memories, reflecting and talking. Any activities as far as with art, you can make those rocks. You can, even Thanksgiving's coming up. You can get a fitted sheet and put it around your table, you know, put it around your breakfast table, and you can write those memories, those happy memories, or the things that, you know, that can be what you're thankful for, right? The memories, and the thankful for the support system that y'all have, right, through this process, and thankful for all of those things, the current things right now, right? And then maybe even future focus, what could be those things that you're thankful for moving forward, you know, and have those out, you know, and it could be a bonding experience, but also sharing and reflecting and also releasing to find that temporary relief for the holidays.
What would you say, before we get into questions, about some, you know, parents that may be like, well, I'm deep, like, I need some help, like, I need help, the importance of even grief therapy. We know people have different, you know, views and assumptions and everything about, you know, grief therapy, but what would you say that would, how should I say it, maybe like qualify, or you highly suggest that if you are at this certain point, you might want to go see a therapist?
Definitely those stuck feelings, which you're gonna feel a little bit of naturally throughout the process. But if you're finding yourself not being able to take the actions and disciplines over the feelings, if you start, you know, becoming just stand still, to definitely reach out. And that may be different for everybody, right? Especially with the ages and things like that. But or different chapters and different, you know, with the stages, different stages, but, we have a good support system in Montgomery County. We have a bunch of good therapists. For individual counseling, for group therapy, within the schools, there's the group counseling groups. There's Mosaics of Mercy, which they do, through arts and crafts, the broken pieces and then mending that together into a heart. We have a lot of support system through, Grace and Guidance, and in my practice, we have therapists, but there's multiple practices, that we have with great qualified people that are willing to help. You can search through Mosaics of Mercy, which is a nonprofit for our county, and you can actually specifically tailor it to based on funding, based on need, based on things like that. So,
And I think that's important because we have a lot of families moving into, of course, Montgomery County being, one of the largest, fastest growing counties in Texas, that works a lot differently from Harris County, where there's like a lot of privately owned. So I think just putting that information out there, parents, Mosaics of Mercy, to go into their website and really get access. And please do not hesitate to contact me as well as school counselor. Now, sometimes here at Bradley, we may not always be able to have grief school groups, only because we gotta make sure kids are kind of around the same age, and sometimes we don't have enough. If we have like one kinder and three, fourth graders, that's not a, age appropriate mix. But definitely would love to process any grief, and at any time when your kid is battling, whatever, like I'm just feeling down, or I remember, my dad's death, or I lost my pet, because sometimes they say, oh, it was like when I was 4, and we may laugh, but for them, that's their experience, right? Okay, well, let us get into some questions. So Lana, one question is, what should I do with personal items? Is it helpful or is it hurtful? Should I keep them, or do I need to give them all away?
I think that's based on the person and the family. I've had, for example, one struggle was a parent, a father had committed suicide, and so the mother and the daughter differed in that. So one of them felt like they wanted to stay within the home because they felt close to their, or to her husband and so forth, and she felt that connection. The daughter, however, was like, no, I don't want to be around these reminders or those personal items and things, I just want to get away from it. And so she didn't want to stay within the household. So it can differ for everybody, but, with personal items, it's what do you need? So your family, with your kids and you, and that remaining family structure, what is it that you need? Is there any items that you find of support for you, right, that you can hold on to for comfort? And then what items may be triggers, negative triggers, right? And sort through the personal items. And then those may change. So different stages or different chapters through that process, you may feel that you need to hold on to this t-shirt.
Well, for my kids, I'm glad you said that. For my kids, and myself, we kept all of his things, because we lost him so sudden. It's hard to part with that, even though they're just worldly items, but it's his, and it was a piece of him. And for each one of my kids, they went through his clothing, and they got something he had worn that had his scent, and they keep it in a Ziploc bag. And when they feel like they need to hear him, feel him, they'll open it and they'll smell it.
Wonderful, yeah.
So that's what they did. That's what they did. And I'm okay with it. It's one of those to me, it was one of those coping mechanisms for them to be able to get to the next day.
I think on that one, I don't think, because you get a lot of outside messages from either family or friends of saying, oh, shouldn't you get rid of that by now? Shouldn't you sell that by now? And I don't think that's fair for the person that's grieving the loss. I think
It's hard.
that's within their control. There's a lot that they can't control in the moment.
But I like how you said it's really sitting down to reflect, is this a comforting thing to me that gives me peace, that maybe gives me hope, that reminds me, that makes me feel grateful? Or is this a trigger to where, obviously, it just tears me apart, and it's just it doesn't do anything.
Right.
So I think, like you said, you have to really, the person that is feeling or experiencing grief, you have to decide what's best for you.
And so with the kids, you can simplify it with the words. Is this helpful is this more helpful or more hurtful, right, with each item, as they're going through the process.
Like that. Okay, next one. My daughter continues to grieve her grandmother. Will she ever get over it? I get that a lot.
It's getting through it. I don't think it's ever getting over it. I don't think getting over it is the right terms, right? For us to use, to be fair for the one that's experiencing the loss. So I like to say get through, right? And that time frame is different from everybody. And the encouragement to get through this, right? To carry it, to carry the load differently, right?
Because I like it's still a load, but you may make it lighter, you know, through the years, and sometimes it may get heavy. But I think that that's important to, you know, understand, and I'm glad this parent asked, because we do sometimes like, okay, baby, you know, that's enough. So, it's important just to know.
And that
it's
too,
a process.
it's hard because the person that's watching the other person suffer, they feel helpless, right? So if you're seeing someone hurt that's had a loss and they're hurt and you can't help them, you know, it's hard to sit back and watch that, which is why there's that need to be like, okay, can you please get over this? Because it's also, you know,
It's painful.
It's painful, right? And then for someone to watch someone go through that pain is hard. So the intention is clear and of good faith of like, you know, let's get over this, you know, let me help you through it. But it's definitely through the process is the key words.
Absolutely. I can't stop crying. Is this normal? I heard you say that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The tears, we can eventually through the process quit crying, but the tears may be different. They may flow different. They may come different. They may be felt different, right? So, but the main thing in the beginning is to allow yourself to release it, to get to that relief. You know, sometimes we can be like, they're never gonna stop, right? They just keep coming, but maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need to open the floodgate, right? So that we can feel that relief to be able to continue on.
Well, there you go, parents. Cry.
Cry, that's right.
Yes, I'm a firm believer, and they may flow differently. You may, you know, find your tears, like you said, sometimes we have tears of joy too. Your tears may be full of sorrow and pain, and then sometimes it may turn into like, God, I miss you. Like you were just such an amazing husband. You know, like I'm just so blessed. You know, it may be, you know, for that. So like you said, it just depends.
They may not stop. They may transform. The tears may transform.
I like that.
So
there you go. I like her catching. They may transform. Sorry. And then I stop. Transform. I'm gonna say that. Like I feel like it needs to be like a hashtag tears. Nice commercial.
That'll be our new shift in Montgomery, right?
Okay, this is the last question. My counselor seemed to help me in the beginning, but now it feels like a complete waste of time. I still feel like I'm just so down, so, you know, should I stop going or?
Well, and I would reassess where are you through the process, right? And it'd be good to talk about this and reflect with the counselor, and separately, both. You know, if it's not the right counselor for whatever reason through the process, they've changed or they've grown or there's a lack of connection at that point, it may need to be a different counselor to come in, you know, at that chapter or that point.
And I think that's the piece that's okay, because I know sometimes it's like, we ain't vibing, and you may not. And it may be like, hey, can you refer to me to someone else? So it just really depends, is what you're saying.
And ethically, the counselor too should be aware of that and saying, okay, I feel like we're having this discussion, and yes, I think we are kind of stagnant. So let's say maybe, you know, here's a referral, maybe try this other person, and you may find a different approach, right? Or you may move to a different, you know, chapter of that process. So it's okay to say, you know, really assess and say, where am I through this process? Is this counselor, is it helpful, right? Am I moving or am I just standing still at this point? And so if not, then the answer would be to, you know, and at that point, they may not need counseling. That too could be a thing. You know, it may be through the growth process, they may be able to lean on their support system more or their faith more, you know, versus their counselor. So, you know, all of that can be fluid and is okay if it comes to that point.
Just depends. Well, ladies.
Well, thank you for being so
great.
valuable, so
I know.
transparent and vulnerable, and I know that's
brave.
hard.
It is
Yes.
hard. It is hard, and every day's a struggle. All this whole process. the new, what did I call it, the new normal?
Mhm.
The new normal is it's a process.
But you were able to express, little do you know, even in the midst of this conversation, you were able to cope with your grief by being able to speak your thoughts out loud and to say them out loud and to cry. And so we just hope with our parents that you feel the same way, you know, and you really take in all the things that we said today. I think it was a really great time. Like, Thanksgiving is coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's dreading. You know, sometimes we get anxiety. Christmas is coming. But what we learned today is that you may experience a different stage, you know, getting closer to that time. But we also learned some different scenarios on how to cope. So we hope that you use our information today. Lana's gonna give me hopefully like a handout that we all can go back and look at the different triggers and everything, as well as giving her private practice information, should you need a therapist. And if you still have any questions and something that we didn't answer, please make sure that you leave a comment or even email me personally or message me personally off of Facebook or Twitter, because we want to answer that for you. So I hope y'all enjoyed.
Yes, well, thank you.
We did good, and we hope that we gave you and provided you a lot of wisdom in regards to grief, because I know some of you may not be experiencing grief, but maybe you have somebody in your family that you may look at differently now and know how to approach.
One slogan that I have
Okay,
that would help, and it helps me and it helps my kids, is we look at each other and we say step by step.
Oh, that's so
Step by step,
beautiful.
because that's what this process is. It's like piece by piece by piece, like piece by piece, like nerd-sized pieces, but
Step by
Uh-huh.
step, day by day.
And even that, you've modeled, you can still be helpful as you're healing, right? And so you're modeling that through this process and saying, this is where I'm at, this is raw, this is what's real, right? And I'm still healing. And I'm working towards planning that purpose and planning for that pain.
Well, y'all heard that. Step by, why is that song in my
Isn't
head?
that right? Step by step.
I know. Day by day.
Yes.
Okay, I'm crazy, I know. But anyways, friends, we hope you enjoyed our show today, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Get Right with Miss Wright, and we will catch you on the next one. You are in for another holiday special treat. All right.
Bye.
Bye.